So there's some soul searching. I don't know if is it real? Is it real soul searching? Is it like just desperate darts at a board stuff? What's happening right now as the Democrats deal with this Tapper book, in addition to the other books that have come out, and just the reality of Trump governing?
There needs to be some soul searching. I question whether that's really taking place right now within the Democratic establishment. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing in liberal media is this effort to provide cover for what the Democrats did in the last election cycle, while simultaneously condemning the authors of any book that sheds a negative light on the Biden administration and the Biden camp. And to be quite frank with you, I'm just tired of political figures, whether we're talking about Democrats or Republicans, who are more interested in their own political ambitions, in their own, money-making capability, as opposed to serving as public servants to do what's right for their party, for their constituents. I just see this whole situation as one big egotistical mess, and the party will continue losing as long as they fail to take a moment, just a beat, to self-reflect and figure out what they need to do to reform, to move forward and be a far more appealing party. Right now, they are not an appealing party. The polls indicate that.
It's funny because when we watched the Democrats these past 4 years and earlier than that too, we pointed out many times when things weren't going Joe Biden's way in the polls, for example, while he was just president or while he was running, they would constantly say, we've got to change the message. Like, people aren't understanding how great he is. Like, it's the messaging that's the problem, as opposed to the underlying policies or like the actual choices he was making, open borders for one. And now it seems like they're in the same damning cycle where the reports are, what we need is more online influencers. What we need is our own Joe Rogan. So we're going to throw money at developing a Joe Rogan type on the left. And from my perch, all I can think is, that's not it. When you get your, well-funded left-wing guy who is a man's man, who's into like martial arts and mixed martial arts and is cool and is funny and somebody that other guys can look up to, he cannot then spend the 2 hours saying, you can't say that word and you can't say that word. And we have to begin with a land acknowledgement and that's where the Democrat Party largely is right now.
Well, it's thought of as the party of scolds, and they do need to move away from that, especially if they're looking to build a coalition large enough to win critical elections. And really, I think a lot of Americans are fatigued by constantly looking over their shoulder, worried that they might say the wrong thing, worried that they might be cast off as some sort of bigot or racist because they accidentally used a word that's no longer in vogue with the whole of the Democratic Party. Look, I think most Americans are good people. And I think, when culture changes, we have to have some grace with individuals to change along with it or to adapt with those changes. I think most Americans are good people who are not bigoted, who are not racist, who are not hateful, but want to live in a pluralistic society that treats all sides and all identities fairly. And what you kind of see with the Democratic Party right now is just this hyper emphasis on all the things that this country has done wrong in the past, what needs to be done moving forward to right those wrongs. And in the meantime, there's just a lot of hateful rhetoric being spewed at people who might have identified as Democrats their entire lives, might have voted as Democrats their entire lives. But there might be a social issue here or there that they're not comfortable with, or maybe they're worried about what they're experiencing in the big city that they're living in that's currently being run by Democratic lawmakers, Democratic governor or mayor, and they want to see some changes and reforms. But if they voice their opinion on those reforms, they'll get dogpiled all over the internet, and they'll be out, made out to be like a terrible person. And what I'm seeing on the right now, and again, I don't know if this is just what happens to be part of the culture on the right or if it's a, political strategy. There's less judgment and more openness to absorbing people into their party. And that's how you win. That's how you win. Now, look, I'm not saying, oh, Democrats need to throw their principles out of the window. They should, absorb, a Nazi or a self-described Klansman. No, I'm not saying that. But you and I both know that there are all sorts of people who have lost their jobs, who have been made targets by the left because of the fact that, hey, you know what? I wanted police reform. I didn't want to abolish the police. Hey, you know what? I see a place for prisons in our society. I do want prison reform, but I don't want to abolish prisons. Those are the type of people who tend to get attacked. And I know that because I happen to be one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Or on the BLM front, like, I'm happy to be more inclusive of people, but don't tell me our goal is to dismantle the nuclear family like it's an evil.
Right. And, I would just warn the right about what they're currently seeing on the left, because I do see some pretty prominent figures on the right who have kind of taken on that purity culture where they're looking to do purity tests of people on the right. And if you're not perfectly in line with what the right wants or what the Trump administration wants, well, you're not welcome, you're not wanted. And if that type of culture festers, well, conservatives are going to lose too.
You can't have that. I mean, there are some people who are diehard MAGA who will still hold it against people who were pro DeSantis. I see that still on Twitter. It's like, what is the point of that? Like, Trump has won. Take the W, run with it, build the coalition. I mean, who cares what happened during the primaries? But I would say in general, you're right that Republicans are much more accepting of different viewpoints and different political philosophies than I've seen over on Team Blue, who resemble North Korea to me in their efforts to make people toe the party line and, continue the right messaging and get Joe Biden across that finish line. We don't care how infirm he is. This New York Times article from 2 days ago is titled, "Democrats Throw Money at a Problem, Countering GOP Clout Online." And this is speaking to that effort to find the new Joe Rogan. At donor retreats and in pitch documents seen by the Times, liberal strategists are pushing the party's rich backers to reopen their wallets for a cavalcade of projects to help Dems, as the cliche now goes, find the next Joe Rogan. They're trying to energize glum donors and persuade them that they can compete culturally with President Trump if only they throw enough money at the problem. The quiet effort amounts to an audacious, skeptics might say desperate, bet that Democrats can buy more cultural relevance online. And it ends with hoping to move away from the current didactic hall monitor style of Democratic politics that turns off young voters, and they will focus on directly funding influencers and co-producing their content, opening a creator talent agency, and starting by inking deals with 4 flagship creators, according to a business plan shared with the Times. Now, you were in this space, like one of the OGs. The Young Turks has been around a long time, since I was on Fox. And you tell me whether it can be recreated with just a deep pocket and some hand-picked selection by some unknown Democratic donor group.
Megyn, if I could be a mouthpiece and rake in the big bucks, I mean, I don't know if I would do it, but I know that I'm not capable of doing it, right? So part of the reason why I find myself in this terrible situation that I'm in, where I'm basically rejected by the left, but I don't fit in with the right, really. Like so I'm like kind of in no man's land right now. And it's not fun. It's pretty awful. But the reason why I'm there is because I have to be authentic. I have to be honest with my audience. It's both selfish because I can't help but just tell people how I actually feel about the issues we talk about. But it's also because I respect my audience. I want my audience to know the truth. And so if I see the left doing something that's counterproductive, if I see something that I don't like, I'm going to speak out about it. And the reason why I do that is because there's still a little bit of hope that maybe they'll learn some lessons. Maybe they'll heed the advice and, recalibrate some of their behavior and some of their policies so they can, attract a broad coalition of voters to support them. But instead, what I've noticed by the Democratic Party is that rather than self-reflect, they like to lash out. They see us as their public servants instead of them being our public servants. And that is a huge, huge problem. So I want to reiterate, I don't fit in on the right. I have some pretty serious left-wing policy preferences. But culturally speaking, the left, I find repulsive at times, and intentionally so. I mean, they're intentionally behaving that way. And it's totally selfish because it's more about how they feel and how they want to purge certain people out of the party, as opposed to thinking about what they need to do to, again, attract a broad coalition of Americans who are willing to buy in to their agenda and program.
Yeah. I mean, I see it now. It's like one of the reasons I'm thrilled that nobody owns one share of my company other than me. I don't have any investors. I'm the only investor. And because then no one owns you. You know, the people who advertise on my show, you know, Genucel doesn't call me up telling me what to say about presidential politics. They just want the platform to sell their makeup. And it's a great brand and I'm happy to endorse it. But my point is they don't control me and none of them would ever try. They'd be booted off the show immediately. And so it, like by definition, the way they're going about this will not work. You cannot have like the Democratic apparatus create this star who then can somehow become a Joe Rogan, because you can't become a Joe Rogan if you're owned by anybody, if you're sent out there with any agenda other than the one you just outlined, which is to tell people your honest opinions and the facts as you know them.
Right. And Joe Rogan's popularity is not manufactured. It was organic. And the part of the reason why it's organic growth, organic popularity is because he's willing to sit down and have conversations with almost anyone. I mean, one of my friends, his name is Ben Burgess. He's a self-identified Marxist. Joe Rogan interviewed him. Joe Rogan will interview people from across the political spectrum. He'll interview people who have nothing to do with politics at all, but they're in a field of work that's super fascinating. That's the way that he grew a massive audience, a massive diverse audience. Now, of course, because of the fact that he had endorsed Donald Trump in the last election, and prior to that had been critical of some of the transgender policies as it pertains to women's sports and minors, the left had kind of turned on him earlier. However, he still has this massive audience. I'll listen to the podcast when he has a guest that I'm, interested in hearing from. And if they think that they're just going to throw money at a problem, the Democrats, and manufacture the next Joe Rogan that's going to help them win elections, I think they're just going to be wasting a lot of money. And they're just going back to what I believe is the biggest issue within the Democratic Party at the moment right now, which is the political bribes, right? You're going to raise money. Okay, great. But that money comes with strings attached. They know that. And oftentimes those donors want goodies that the voters do not want. And that's why you had Kamala Harris trying to do this ridiculous balancing act where she's trying to appease the donors without upsetting left-wing voters. But the voters weren't buying it because guess what? Voters are way smarter than our politicians know.
This July, there is a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio de Janeiro. The bloc of emerging superpowers, including China, Russia, India, and Iran, are meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, some worry global demand for U.S. dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of the dollars in your savings. While this transition, if it happens, would not happen overnight, the Rio Reset could mark a pivotal moment. So learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free info kit on gold by texting MK to the number 989898. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold arm you with a free, no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset. Text MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.